Hello and welcome to another video. In this one, we'll be looking at the Bakhmut front, considering how the date for the fall of Bakhmut is coming ever so closer. I thought we should have a look at what comes after, what will happen once Bakhmut falls, where will the Russians move next, will the Ukrainians launch a counterattack, what will the situation be? Let's take a look into that. And if we take a look at this video here, we can see that the Ukrainian forces are fighting in this citadel area where the buildings are completely destroyed. Like taking a look at this drone footage from Bakhmut and specifically from the citadel area, we can see that the debris has fallen everywhere. There's so many holes in these buildings, there's hardly anywhere where they can hide. And the Russian forces just continuously shell these areas, especially in the nighttime, because then they prevent the Ukrainian forces from sleeping. And at the same time, we see that they are heavily shelling this area all day long. So the Russian forces continuously attack these areas with their snipers, small arms fire, and artillery shells, while the Ukrainians are trying to hold back the Russian forces from advancing. So they have to be at these vantage points, which allow them to keep a better outlook and have an overview over the situation. And at the same time, they have their drones flying around, which gives them a lot of overview over the situation. But at the same time, the Russian forces also have their own drones, and they have accurate artillery fire, which prevents the Ukrainians from properly using their vantage points. So there's just a lot of destruction from this continuous month-long shelling of the residential area here in Bakhmut. Here we get a broader view of the situation and we can see everything is just destroyed, just everything. There's no building that is left untouched and it's just completely destroyed. Now we get a closer view at different areas and just how like nothing that looks normal anymore, everything is just destroyed. So Bakhmut is the central piece in this part of the front line. There's no other major cities in this area. The next one is Horolivka here to the south, which the Russians already control. Then we have the western parts where there is Toretsk and Konstantinivka. Other than that, there is the Slovyansk-Konstantinivka line, which is this defensive line by the Ukrainian forces, which connects the cities of Slovyansk, Kramatorsk, and Konstantinivka. And then it goes all the way down to Toretsk. So that is the defensive line of the Ukrainian forces here. Then we have the Severodonetsk River here to the north, which connects to the Siversk area. However, most of the roads that go in and out, let's put that in the yellow color. The roads that go in and out of this area all connect to Bakhmut, which means there's no actual road connecting the Ukrainian side with Siversk. There is this one between Liman and Siversk, however, it crosses over the Severodonetsk River, which we can see here. So there's essentially no significant major road that connects to Siversk. And then if we zoom in, we can see there are a few smaller roads. This one has been cut off due to the Russian hold of Sako-Ivanseti, and this is why we're seeing the Ukrainian forces attempting to regain control over the village, as that will allow them to connect the road here by Vasyukivka to the Siversk area, which will give them a second supply line. But other than that, there is this one road that goes through the villages of Sviatopokrovska and Resnikivka and so on. So this is the single road that is the main road being used by the Ukrainian forces towards the supply of Siversk. Then there is, of course, some pontoon bridges here and there, most likely by the road itself, so that the Ukrainian forces can resupply Siversk. So the main supply points comes from the north by the Liman area, across pontoon bridges, and then we have the roads here by the center. So with the latest reports about the weather, seeing that the weather will improve and there will barely be any rain in the coming weeks, we can estimate that most likely the ground will become solid very soon. And what does this mean? It means that both sides will be able to use the ground as it will not be muddy, so both sides will be able to cross over without having to go through the roads. So most likely what will happen once the ground becomes solid and there's no rain, then we will see both sides start using normal roads. So straight west of Bakhmut, we see that there's one significant geographical barrier, which is the canal that goes through from Severodonetsk River all the way down to the east of Chasiv Yar and down to the front line. So we can see here from the south, we can see that the Russian forces have control over the canal line, except for this central part right here. However, there's no major bridgehead or significant areas that the Ukrainians hold across the canal line. As for the central area, the Russian forces control the whole line. And then by Ivanivske, this is the main defensive point on across the canal line by the Ukrainian forces after Bakhmut. This is Ivanivske. Then we have Romove, Bohdanivka, Kalinina, Hryhorivka, and so on here to the north. As the proximity to Chasiv Yar is very close to the villages here, that means that the Ukrainian forces have heavy fire control, especially with the artillery on these villages, as the Ukrainian forces have a full-strength brigade in Chasiv Yar that is mainly focused around artillery. So heavy fire control by Ukraine on the villages right next to the canal, so they will most likely keep this bridgehead, as the Russian forces would not want to take the casualties that would require to hold the canal line through this, unless they have full control over Bakhmut. So we may see a Russian advance towards the canal line, especially to the north by the Khomove-Bohdanivka area, but also an attempt to take Ivanivske, both by advancing here to the west of it, but also trying to cut it off and is separated from Khomove and the rest of the eastern canal bridgehead by the Ukrainian forces. So they will have their full force trying to gain control over the canal line, as that is a natural barrier for the Russian forces to hold in case of a Ukrainian counterattack, but also in case they want to advance towards Chasiv Yar, it is best for them to hold the whole canal line, as it will serve as a strong flank for them to force their way through. The second thing is the supply line that goes to Siversk. So most likely we will see the Russian forces attempt to take control of Vesyukivka to strengthen their hold on this intersection right here, as well as push westwards by the E40 highway to move towards the canal by this area, which will then allow them to move northwards and take control over this intersection, or the village of Rai Oleksandrivka, as that will cut off all supplies except for the ones that goes across the Severodonetsk River between Siversk and the rest of the front line. So the Russian forces will mainly focus on cutting off the supplies going in and out of Siversk. If the Russian forces manage to capture the village of Rai Oleksandrivka, then they can start moving towards the river line by the Severodonetsk River, which will allow them to then cut off completely the supplies going in and out of Siversk, especially if they start shelling all of the pontoon bridges going across the Severodonetsk River, which will allow the Russian forces to then focus heavily on Siversk itself, attacking it from all directions, as they will have control over all of the barriers, especially this canal line. It spells as a huge defensive line for the Russian forces in case they want to hold this line here, and it will allow them to completely isolate Siversk. After that, we will see a Russian bridgehead across the canal line, and they will try to move towards the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk-Konstantinivka line, as that will allow the Russian forces to focus on the next and final defensive line in the Donbas region of the Ukrainian forces. So the immediate result of the fall of Bakhmut would be a Russian advance towards the canal line. As they try to take control over the canal line, they'll move northwards to try and cut off the supplies to and from Siversk and cut off all of the Ukrainian forces in this part of the front line, and they will try to gain control over the south of the Severodonetsk River, after which they'll try advancing towards the Sloviansk-Kramatorsk-Konstantinivka line. So that is my assumption and estimate and analysis of the situation and what will happen once the fall of Bakhmut happens. 85% of my viewers are returning viewers. That means you've watched my videos before, yet you return to watch more, yet somehow 65% of my viewers are not subscribed. So if you're one of those, please make sure that you are subscribed and make sure to leave a like and check out my Patreon if you want to support me, as I release weekly exclusive videos as well as live streams to my Patreon supporters. And that is going to be all for this update. Thank you all for watching and have a great day.